nostalgia, memories, growing up in Central Florida in the 1990s. What a bunch of sappy crap. It's the Sappy Crap Podcast. Starring Steve Bauman and Jarman Day.
Welcome to the Sappy Crap Podcast, where the names are changed, but the stories are real. I'm Jarman.
And I'm Steve. That's right. The stories are real, at least how our clumsy brains has tossed them around.
Yes, that is correct.
Like an overly bruised peach. This is what they are.
Ew, I don't like peaches to begin with.
That's right.
I could eat a peach for hours.
Oh, God.
Nicolas
No,
Cage.
thank you. Not here.
Not here, not now. This is
join us
wholesome.
as we take this stumbly walk down memory lane, and we're going to talk about siblings.
Yes, and I will apologize in advance if any of my siblings happen to listen to this episode. I know my half-brother Joe Bond, which I'll talk about later, listens to many of these episodes, so you might be featured pretty heavily in this, Joe. Just be ready.
Hey, Joe.
We're using real names here, I think, because that people can find out who our siblings are pretty easily.
That's right. I'll also provide them a list of my fears.
Yes, which they probably already know.
That's right.
So I've got plenty of siblings to talk about. So
I only have the one.
We'll see how this goes. So you want me to start off with something?
What do you think? What's your earliest memory with one of your siblings?
Something I think we've mentioned before, and this is as it goes with nostalgia and remembering things, is what do you have an actual memory of, and what is just pictures, photographs, or stories people have told so many times that you feel like you remember it? But do you really remember it, or is it just like a fabrication of all the different things you've seen?
For me specifically, I can specifically say that it's kind of a mix, because I know that I have some of my first real solid memory with my brother that I still have is very much there are photos that capture it, and so I have those sort of as a mental reference. But then I remember,
right,
like the actual thing.
Those help you remember it actually happening, right?
Right. But it's the convenient mix of the fact that I have pictures to back it up.
Yeah.
In this one specific case. And the reason is when I was 4 or 5, we were living in Staten Island, New York. My brother would have been 14, 15, 16, depending on where I was in age. And mom wanted to get Christmas photos. And I remember it was warm because she was taking them early. And she put us in matching blue and green and white striped polos, I think.
Like you do for Christmas.
And there was a Christmas runner on the table, and I think ornaments and stuff. Mom has pictures somewhere. And I remember my brother and I just ruined pictures. It's just what we do. It's what we do, and it's who we are. But we really tried, and I remember we started cracking up. And it was a sort of cracking up where you don't know what you're laughing at. But it just makes you laugh harder. And then you see someone else laughing, it makes you laugh harder, and then you make them laugh harder. So we're doing this, and mom's trying to get us to calm down. And I remember how just upset mom was that we were really making trouble.
You're ruining Christmas.
We'd calm down and we'd go. And as soon as we'd make eye contact with each other or with mom or whatever, we would lose it again and set off, and mom would, guys,
behave.
So in this specific instance, I have this mixture where my mom was actively taking pictures while this was happening. And I remember little snippets and little bits.
Well, that's great. She has candid photos of that kind of interaction. Kind of shows the relationship between the two of you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What about you? What's your mixed memory?
Well, I'm I think about 9-10 months younger than my sister. So it has to be no more than 9 months, obviously, a baby. But it's really a year and 9 months. That's what it is.
There we go.
That makes more sense.
Better.
That's how biology works.
Your poor mother.
Yes. So we're almost 2 years apart. We're 2 years apart school wise. That's how I always felt, 2 years younger than my sister.
There you go.
But so she was born first, obviously. And I came home from the hospital, and I know this just from stories. I don't remember this personally. And I remember she was so upset that I was getting all this attention that she used to get. And so she started to bite my toes. She wanted to bite my toes off. That was the beginning of our rivalry at a young age. But as a young person, my earliest memories, I think, of her, my sister, are us playing school together. She always wanted to be a teacher, and she is to this day. So when we were little tiny kids, she put me behind like a little table, and she would give me lessons, like these little rudimentary lessons of learning my name and stuff like that. And I'd have to sit there and I'd complain sometimes, but she'd be like, no, sit down. This is class.
She'd hit you with a ruler.
But I remember most of the time liking it, enjoying being like, with my sister and hanging out with her and
all the attention.
Yeah. And then as I got a little bit older, she got, friends, and she became too cool to hang out with her dorky little brother. And we were still little kids, but I was so upset that I couldn't hang out with them or get their attention. And so I remember one particular early situation where I actually grabbed a knife from the kitchen. My parents weren't home, and I just started chasing them around the house with a knife. I wasn't ever actually going to stab them, but I just wanted to scare them. And my sister...
You did, buddy.
Yes. And boy, did I get in trouble when my parents got home. And a separate instance that was almost like that was I was so pissed at them for some reason. I don't know why I was so angry at them all the time, that I picked up a little weight, like a little dumbbell thing, and I threw it at them. And she closed the door to her bedroom just in time, and the weight stuck in the door.
Oh.
And my parents were so pissed because they had to replace the door of our bedroom, and they were very angry. So those are some of my early memories, just starting to get to the very angry relationship we'd eventually start to grow into in our teenage years, which I'll get to later. But yeah.
See, my brother and I were lucky enough to avoid that because of the age distance between us.
Yeah, and he's your half brother, right?
Yeah, my half brother.
Yeah.
His dad, Richard, died when he was very young. I think 3, 2.5 or 3, something like that. And then my mom met my dad, 7 years later.
So you only knew growing up with him as your brother.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the thing. He's always been around. There was never new introduction. He was always 10 years older. So like my earliest memories of him, he's like 15 or 16.
Yeah. Already teenager.
And then he went off to like a private school when we were in Staten Island, private school in Pennsylvania, I think, or maybe New York somewhere. Called Wyoming Seminary. And so he was just kind of gone. And I remember I got to go up in his bedroom and he wasn't there. And I remember like thinking like, yeah, it's ready. He can't stop me.
I own the power now.
And he couldn't take his Nintendo or his TV to school. So I got to play his Nintendo games on his television.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't good at any of them. So it always resulted in me going up and playing for like 20 minutes and getting really frustrated because Nintendo games are hard when you're 5.
They're very hard now.
Like the original Nintendo games are hard.
Really hard.
So they're not forgiving. You just die and go back.
No continues. You're just done.
You're just done. Go home, kid. You don't belong here.
But I am home. Well, that's what pissed me off was that I was always into video games, of course, and my mom would, was very wonderful. And for Christmas and birthday, she would, try to get me the one game I was really like searching for Sega Genesis or something like that. But she was always a sense of fairness between my sister and I. So she wanted to make sure my sister got the things that I got. And so one year my sister was gifted a Game Gear. And I had a Game Boy, but the Game Gear was in color. It was bigger. Had the nicer games. And I was like,
took 6 batteries and only lasted an hour.
Of course. You had to buy the actual AC adapter extra. So that didn't come with it. So you had to have like 9 batteries to keep it going. And she had the cool game and she wouldn't let me play it. She's like, no, this is mine. You have all your video games you can play on the TV. I'm like, but yours is so cool. I was so jealous.
I remember that was just in like a box somewhere in the game room for a long time.
The Game Gear?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. After a while, it's obsolete.
My sisters. We don't really turn it on.
I'm not allowed to touch it. So
that was kicking around. Wherever Ashley is, she will know.
I would be afraid that she would know. So
she somehow immediately knows. Like a beacon goes off.
No.
She's like, I gotta go beat Jarman's ass.
Pretty much. So when I was around 8 years old, my parents got a divorce and my mom remarried to a guy named Scott, and he already had 2 kids. And so he had an older kid who was probably around your brother's age,
Sounds about right.
A good 10 years older than me. And he came to live with us for a while, and he was a real hippie. And he was he was into the cool music scene, and my sister was immediately like obsessed, and she was like, she wanted to be his best friend because he knew all the cool music, and I was too young and I didn't fit in with that because I was so nerdy and a weakling, and I was just like, whatever, they can hang out with each other. But then he had a younger brother who was only my sister's age, 2 years older. But he was kind of a weird mix between a jock and a nerd. His name was Peter. And so he would come down every summer. He lived in Chicago with his mom. But every summer he'd come down and stay with his dad, which was with us. And so we became pretty good friends. It was a back and forth of where he would, one summer he'd be hanging out with my sister a lot, trying to be cool. And the next summer he'd hang out with me and we'll play video games all summer and make movies and stuff. And so it was I never had a brother. So I was like, this is kind of cool. And so half the time.
I remember Peter coming and doing a couple of our projects with us.
Oh, the movie projects. Yeah. Our nerdy
I remember
movies.
us putting a chin beard on him at one point. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah. The outdoor movie. Taste the
outdoor
soup.
movie where we stowed away in the indoor pavilion downtown Winter Park, hoping no one caught us, kicked us out.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, we played a lot of video games and stuff, and that was good. And then later on, he would there'd be another summer where he'd try to be cool that summer, and he'd date my sister's girlfriends and stuff, because he was a cool dude. And he was really into sports and stuff like that, so he could play both worlds basically. And then around 15 years old, my stepbrother Jason, who was the older brother, he passed away unfortunately from drugs, and he had been off them for a long time. And then he had shaved the big beard off. He cut off his hair. He was going to veterinarian school, and he graduated, and then he celebrated a party, and some of his friends had some drugs there, and he ended up doing them, and he didn't wake up the next day. So he passed away when I was around 15 years old. And it was a crazy thing to experience, at that young. And of course it was devastating to my stepfather, and kind of changed him forever. And he's finally kind of getting back into being his old self again, maybe 15 years later. Because you can't imagine losing your own child. It's just crazy.
No, I won't. I just refuse to let my mind go there.
Of course not. Sad. Absolutely.
I have very vague memories of Jason.
Yeah, you would have known him for a couple of years, and he was in and out of the house a lot, so he wasn't always around as much. But
I just remember the door of his room was always closed, and we never really knew if he was in there.
And his room always smelled like patchouli and probably pot, and had a lot of those glow in the dark posters and stuff like that.
Sublime posters.
Sublime.
At least 2 Sublime posters.
Oh yeah, but he was super sweet and nice and just real chill hippie type of dude, not like his brother. But now since then, I've grown up with Peter, my stepbrother, and he's turned into a wonderful guy. He's got a wife and 2 kids, and he's still super nerdy. At one point when we were teenagers, I have to mention this, he was #1 in the nation for Quake. Quake 2, I believe, when it was online for the first time. And so for a whole week, he was #1 in the whole nation. He was that good at Quake. So, and he's teaching his kids about Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff. So I'm very proud of that fact that he's kept
I remember
that nerdy
it
stuff.
really leveled out with him at some point. And I think it was sort of when we got into high school,
mm-hmm.
and we were all just sort of in high school. And so it wasn't like the little brother, middle school brother thing anymore. We were just kind of high school dudes then.
Yeah, and we got along pretty well at that point, and there was less tension and fighting like with siblings always do.
Yeah, I remember when I went with your family up to the Georgia cabin at one point, and I think we had to pick him up in Jacksonville.
Oh, for some reason, probably flew into Jacksonville.
Yeah, he flew into Jacksonville. We were picking up on the way up to Georgia, and I remember we got out of the van, the green van.
Oh yeah,
and saw him, and he gave hugs, and then he gave me a hug, and I was like, oh, we're kind of friends.
Hey, this is good.
I remember that trip was the first kind I was like, oh, Peter and I are kind of friends. All right.
This is working out. My sister and I, through our teenage years, we did not get along because she was definitely more in the cool crowd. She was a cheerleader for a while, but also hung out with like the kind of grunge kids, stuff like that. And I was just a super nerd and a little weakling and just didn't chill with those circles. And so she'd try to throw parties and the parents were out of town and I would tattle on her and stuff. And so we just always butted heads.
And then one time you kind of stole the car. And then we went on like a chase adventure with her and her dickbag boyfriend chasing us in a different car.
I do remember that vaguely.
Do you want me to tell the story?
Sure. I don't remember much of that.
Okay. Smash cut. Your parents are out of town for a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
This happened. We were 15, maybe 16. And I think that you had maybe literally just gotten your license. And I mean, just gotten your license, like weeks before. But it was at the point where your parents still were not letting you drive alone.
Right.
And so even though they left the Saturn in the driveway, you are not to drive it.
The Saturn.
And that lasted about 4 hours. And then you took the keys and we drove the Saturn. And we thought we were so slick. And you did great. I remember I was going after a girl, a really ill-advised girl at that point, and she was hanging out. And this guy, Jimmy, was with us.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a art thing downtown in Winter Park. And we went. It was so cool, blah, blah. And while we were there, your sister spotted us.
Oh.
Because she was supposed to be with her boyfriend all weekend.
Right.
But they spotted us, and she was pissed. She was pissed. How dare you get to do something that she didn't get to do at this age while your parents out of town? And she was like, gonna bust you. I remember she was rageful, and she felt like it was her duty because she was your big sister.
And I told her so many times. So.
Oh, man. So I remember them literally chasing us in a Gear Ace car, coming after us. And I remember we went back into my neighborhood and we cut back into like a cul-de-sac, and we thought we were real slick, and we hung back for like 2 minutes. And then we were like, all right, they got to be gone by now. And we drove out back to the road, and they were just right fucking there and found us.
I barely remember this.
So I remember I lived in a cul-de-sac further down, and I didn't want you to get trapped. So I remember I was like, just let me out of the side of the road. I'll walk home. So you let me out of the side of the road. I said bye to this girl who was still in the back of your car.
What?
But she lived close to you. So it was fine.
Jeez.
And I remember I kind of stood in the way of Gary's car for like 2.5 seconds. And then I walked the rest of the way home.
Oh my God.
Your sister was chasing you. She was so pissed.
What an adventure. Oh my God.
Oh my
well,
gosh.
I will say, to just cap off my sister's kind of story, I mean, obviously I have so much stuff with her and stories and wonderfulness, but luckily after we went to college and we were away from each other for a while, one of my fondest memories is the day I went off to college, because she went to school locally in near Orlando where we grew up, but I was going off to Boston for school, and we were still in really bad terms at that point. We didn't talk a lot, but I just remember that night I couldn't go to sleep because the next day I was going to be driving to Boston. And I just went into her room, didn't say a word, but just like laid down in her lap and started crying. And she just, because I was so scared of what was going to happen going to college. And so she was just like petted my hair and like comforted me. And I hugged her and then went to sleep. And it was like one of the most cherished moments I have with my sister was that she was, even though we just couldn't stand each other, we were still brother and sister. And she was like, I got you. It's all right. You're going to be okay. You know, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, she's so wonderful. And then after that point, after college, we've gotten closer and closer. I mean, she lives far away now in Colorado, but we're actually good siblings now. We love each other and there's no fighting.
Yeah, I can only say that I got to see you guys that way like one time.
When we were good with each other?
Yeah, it was when I came to visit you in Boston on a spring break or a winter break or something, and she was also in town.
Oh, yeah.
We hung out with her and one of her friends
and
played some karaoke video game.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was like the one time I got to see you guys hang out where you guys weren't like trying to knife one another.
And for years now, it's been great. Like since we've been like 19, we just, and I'm 35 now. So we just get along so wonderfully. And she was visiting not long ago and she has a baby now. And I'm so proud of her and so happy to be with her.
What are your memories of my brother?
So, I mean, your brother I wish people on this podcast could just talk to him for like 10 minutes because he has the best, driest sense of humor in the world. And I remember so many jokes he would say, and I'm like, 15, 10, I get the variety of ages. And it would take me like 5 minutes to get the joke that he told 5 minutes ago.
That he was being a jackass.
Well, that he was making fun of me. And I didn't even realize it until 5 minutes later. And like, oh my God, that was really mean and really funny for something like that.
No, that shirt looks great. It barely makes you look like Hitler. You just walk, and then he would just move on to the next thing.
And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh my God, what did he just say to me? Hold on. Wait a minute. But he was also just he was nice to us and didn't talk down to us like we were kids. I remember that. He was always just like, as if we were kind of equals that he was being sarcastic with.
When he came to hang out with me and my friends, like he came to hang out with me and my friends. Like he knew what hanging out with high school kids was.
Yeah. And he wasn't weird about it. He felt totally at ease.
Oh, yeah. I remember at one point your parents were having some sort of party. I don't think it was the Christmas party. It might have been a different thing. And he came.
Yeah, I remember that.
Three of us like hanging out in the game room while there's this ruckus party going on.
Yep, I remember that. And that's where we learned all our best jokes was from your brother. These terrible, dirty jokes and everything.
We're not family friendly, right? I don't have to care.
No, it's fine.
Okay. So I remember you and me and him went to Gators Dockside, and he had a few beers, not a ton of beers. He wasn't unsafe to drive, but he had 2 or 3 beers over the course of 2 hours. Yeah.
Right.
And somewhere right as the third beer tipped, I remember he started telling us some really terrible jokes. And one of which was, how do you get a nun pregnant? You fucker.
But his delivery was amazing because he was just like, how do you get a nun pregnant? I don't know. You fucker. Like, just like, of course, like, how else? It's terrible.
I remember that was one of the jokes that was told for the first time, came into my repertoire at Gators Dockside at the third.
And I've
year.
told that joke for the last 15 years.
Thank you, Christian.
No,
Thank
actually,
you.
it's probably 20 years at this point.
Probably now. Yeah, we're getting close.
And I like that your brother, as a person, I think you always said, never thought he would get married and have kids, be the settle down type of guy. And he's done all of that now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you had told me that, like, at that point, because he had a long-term girlfriend, like long-term, like 13, 14 years, something like that, before they broke up. And they had both very much held the line of, like, they aren't having kids, they aren't getting married. And since I just assumed in my head, after, 8 or 9 years, I was like, oh, they're just going to be together forever. I just assumed that was reality.
Right.
Like, that was just locked into my head. So if you had told me then that he was going to, have a wife and a kid and they just bought a house in Pittsburgh,
that's crazy.
I would say, shut the fuck up. You're lying.
And it's ironic that you're talking about wife and kids while your kid cries in the background.
Oh, he's so pissed.
So angry.
Another memory of you, me, and my brother that I've got is we went to that Denny's that we always went to.
Oh, yeah.
Right up by the bowling alley on Loma.
Real classy joint.
On Gators Dockside. They shared the same parking lot. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
That Denny's. And we were in there and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't even remember the situation. It was late. And we got something to eat and we paid and we walked out and we got to your car and you like started checking your pockets and you went, oh shit, I must have left the keys on the table. Because you have this bad habit of setting your keys on tables.
Oh yeah, I still do this day.
I remember this. Bad habit. And so you're like, oh, I'll be right back. So you walked in and you get just inside the door and Christian pulls your keys out of his pocket. And he goes, woohoo! And then he hops in and we hop in your car and you come out to us doing donuts in your Mustang.
I remember that now.
In an empty Denny's parking lot at like 2:30 or 3 in the morning.
Just that weird sense of humor. He has like a British sense of humor, I feel like. It's very British.
He's like an overjoyed child that he pulled it off. He was so excited.
And I also remember the fact that he is one of the original creators, or at least one of the developers of the original Windows Media Player. Something involving that?
He worked, I think, on Windows 98 or Windows 2000 on the media player. Like
yeah.
File condensing and some other stuff like that.
Because he's also like, pretty genius level intellect up there with especially like math and science, something you and I are not.
Right now he's a vice president or something like that. Vice president of technologies or something.
Yeah, and he had like his own app design company and everything. He's always done well for himself.
Yeah, he's a smart dude.
And there's a story of him running down a track in a smoking jacket, I believe.
Maybe?
I remember this story specifically because he remember him telling me that he dropped out of college because he didn't.
Yes, he did.
And I think it was like his last day or something, as far as I can remember it, that him and his friend got like cigars and put on smoking jackets and ran around the track like their last day.
That sounds right.
Also like a very weird Monty Python type of thing to do. So
college was not for him.
Yeah, and he didn't need it because look where he is now. So Stranger Stories is that my biological father lived a long and storied life before he met my mom. And it's a long story, probably be a whole nother episode, but he had kids throughout his life. And I just happened to be, as far as I'm aware, the last kid that he had. And he was much older than my mother. He was born in 1939. So he had a long time to be having kids before I came around in 1986. And I believe it was my senior year. My half brother will let me know if I'm wrong about this. That my senior year of high school, it was right before Oklahoma. I was going to do the production of Oklahoma in high school. My dad tells me that, hey, your long lost half brother has contacted me and he wants to meet you. And my dad played it off like it was no big deal, that it was, oh, I just never talked about it because it wasn't important kind of thing. And from what I gather now is that my half brother searched him out and found him because my dad had long ago just pretty much abandoned his family, which he did several times throughout his life. But the benefit of all my dad's craziness is that I got to gain a really awesome half brother that I got to meet my senior year of high school. And it was really weird because he's half Venezuelan. His mother was Venezuelan. And so I walk in to meet this other skinny, nerdy guy who looks like me, except a little bit more Latin flair and more handsome. And I'm like, hey, it's like I'm meeting a new brother. This is so weird. And so from then on, I got to meet his family. He lived in Miami for a long time, but then he went and met his wife and moved to North Carolina, and they have 2 kids. And it's just been, I've gotten to see him over holidays and stuff since then. He went to visit a lot before my dad passed away. And after my dad's passed away, we've been able to commiserate about how crazy of a character my dad was, and share stories about that. And we still talk to this day. We text about Marvel stuff, and he listens to the podcast now. And he says he loves learning about the stuff that he didn't get to experience with me because we didn't know each other before my senior year of high school. So this podcast is like his window into finding out who I was. And we're finding a lot of weird parallels in the way we grew up and the things we were into and the kind of things we like to get into as kids, even though we never knew each other because we have, similar genes of some sort. So he's just really cool.
The one real memory I have with Joe is he took us to Universal City Walk, and the 3 of us went to a piano bar.
Oh, yeah.
And he bought us big fruity cocktail drinks, and it was a real fun night.
I don't know if you were around for it, but there was a lot of excursions when he came into town to Big Daddy's karaoke bar. We went there a lot.
I remember Big Daddy's.
Because before Joe moved to North Carolina and found it,
he was a pop singer.
He was a pop singer. He sang, and he had an album out, if not 2 albums. And he sang in Spanish and in English. And he was a fantastic singer. He's a tenor, but he's a big range. But I love this. He'll probably embarrass me telling the story, but we go to Big Daddy's karaoke, and he takes singing very seriously because he's actually good at it. So we were like, you got to sing a song. He's like, okay, well, I can't just go up there. I got to practice it. So he goes out to the car and plays the song on his phone first and sings along to it. But his name is already in the queue. But then he gets up on stage and he sings Journey, I think Open Arms. And he sounded just like the original singer.
Steve Perry.
He sounded just like him. And I think it was Open Arms. He'll probably correct me on that too. But it was like the whole crowd just like got quiet. I'm like, what the hell? Who is this guy?
Fuck?
It was just very unique, but very cool guy. And I'm glad he's part of the extended family. But my dad had several other families, I think before and even in between Joe and myself. And Joe has sought them out and found kind of our family tree. Some of them have contacted me and Joe on their own. They found us through Facebook and modern day technology. And so I'm not even sure how many siblings I have out there. I only know of a few of them, and I probably won't meet many of them, but it's just weird.
That's true.
I have a sister who's my mom's age, which is very weird.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I have a niece who is my age. So that's a mind fuck for you right there.
That's like Kentucky shit.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a thing. That's some of my sibling story there.
Oh man.
But yeah, I'm glad that your kids, speaking of siblings, you got 2 kids now. My best buddy, also Patrick, he's got 2 kids now. They'll have each other as siblings.
Just rounding it out, man.
Yeah. And I hope to have one day that I get to have the 2 kids and that they get to have each other, because it is good growing up with somebody either to look up to or to commiserate with. Not just cats that die on you by getting killed by garage door openers.
Various ways of cat death.
Okay. Yeah. Which we've talked about, episode Pets.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Sappy Crap Podcast. What do you think?
I think you're right. I mean, there's so many stories we'll probably tell about our siblings throughout future episodes that just come up naturally, but that's who we got. And there's some great characters. So I'm glad we could talk about them.
Join us next time on the Sappy Crap Podcast as we stumble, tumble, and rumble down memory lane.
That's right. And we don't know what we'll be talking about yet, but I'm sure it'll be fantastic topic. Stay tuned.
Why don't you take the closing line?
And remember, the good days weren't always that good.
This podcast was brought to you by A Play on Nerds.